You're listening to the Fierce Valley Podcast, episode 205. Stages of Fat Identity. Signs you're thriving, signs you're trapped. Let's do it!
Perfect.
Oh, hey, I'm your host, Vinnie Wellsby, pronouns they, them. Thanks for joining me. So excited that you're here. I am doing a master's in counselling, as you may know if you've listened to other episodes. And something I mentioned that I had learned a while ago was stages of identity for marginalized groups. And I was like, this is so similar to something that I've already created in regards to the journey of unlearning anti-fat bias. But this is an established framework, which has been obviously lots of thought has gone into it. Not that I didn't put thought into the thing that I was thinking about, but anyway, it's more robust and etc. So I wanted to share that with you, the framework in detail, so you can see your stages of development in regards to your identity as a fat person. Also, if you're not a fat person, where you're going with your identity as someone with privilege if you have a smaller body. We're going to talk about that too. And also I'm going to give you the things that you might be thinking or saying depending on where you're at in the fat liberation journey, so that you can go, interesting. Yes, I have been thinking ABC and therefore I need to work on ABC, or I have been thinking XYZ. Look at me, I've really come far in my journey. Sometimes it's really helpful for people to point out where we might have a kind of belief that's based in bias that could be modified in order to help us, feel better about ourselves or do better in the world. And because sometimes it's really hard to know because you just believe something, right? You're just like, well, I know ABC, or you don't even know that you think something, and it's only when someone says, oh, well, that belief might not be so helpful that we can say, oh shit, I didn't even realize it. Okay, let's make a change. So the model is called the racial/cultural identity development model. It's shortened to R/CID. But if you wanted to have a little Google, that's what you would Google, the racial/cultural identity development model, or RCID. So it's a framework used in psychology to explain how racialized people or people from marginalized groups develop awareness of their identity in relation to the dominant culture. And it describes 5 different stages that people can move through as they understand their cultural identity and experiences with oppression. And you could start at one place and you move through the stages and go back, or stay at the beginning of it and never move through the different stages, or just be at the end stage because you were brought up in an environment that supports your identity as a positive thing about you. If that's you, who are you? That's so weird. Well, well, in regards to fatness, how often are we coming from households that are like, you know what, you be you, whatever your body size is. Maybe kids now are experiencing that, but people my age, if they're out there, they're weird. They're weird. People who are not traumatized are giant weirdos. Anyway, okay. So let me go through the stages. So we're going to go through what the stage is, the attitude that you'd have towards yourself, the attitude you'll have towards other people, and attitudes towards the dominant group. So this is the framework in regards to racialized people. Then we're going to put it into fat folks. All right. So, and actually, it's not just racialized people for this model, but this is how it's a lot of times used. Not always. Anyway, so stage 1 is conformity. In your, this is the stage of minority development model. So cultural identity, stage 1, conformity. So your attitude toward yourself is that you're self-depreciating or neutral towards yourself because of negative attitudes that you have towards yourself, because of, what other people have taught you. The attitude that you'd have towards the same marginalized group, so that would be group depreciating or neutral because of negative attitudes towards own group. So you would say, the other people, they're not so great either. Attitude towards others of a different marginalized identity. So towards other people who have different marginalized identity would be discriminatory or neutral. And the attitudes towards the dominant group would be group appreciating. So saying that group, love them. They're the nuts. They're great. We're not so great. Sound familiar? Okay, stage 2, dissonance and appreciating. So the attitude toward yourself when you're in stage 2 of dissonance and appreciating is there's a conflict between self-depreciating and group appreciating. And there's a conflict between that in regards to how you look at yourself, how you look at others in your group, and how you look at people within different marginalized group, plus how you look at those with the privilege, the dominant group. So there's a conflict between appreciating and something else, kind of like it's dissonance though, right? It's cognitive dissonance where, you've always thought A plus B equals C, but now you're like A plus B might equal D. Hang on, no. Let's just go back to equaling C because that makes me feel more comfortable. But hang on, something's pulling me. So it's kind of a push and pull. Next is stage 3, resistance and immersion. So this is where you start appreciating yourself and appreciating parts of the group that you belong to. So other people. And then towards other people with a marginalized identity, there's conflict between empathy for them and going back to feeling either neutral or discriminatory towards them. And then you start depreciating, not feeling so good about the dominant group. Okay, stage 4, introspection. By the way, I'm going to give you examples exactly what this looks like for fatness, right? So stage 4 is introspection. So there's the attitude toward yourself is concern with basis of your self-appreciation. So you're thinking, okay, I'm starting to appreciate myself, but I'm a bit wobbly about it. And then you're looking at the way that you're viewing others. You're looking at the way that you're viewing people in your group and people outside of your group and thinking, have I been fucked up in the way that I've been viewing these people? And then thinking, have I been fucked up with the way that I've been putting the dominant group on a pedestal? So that's that introspection of oh, okay, well, I've learned to kind of appreciate myself, but the way that I viewed things in the past, was that fucked up? And finally, stage 5, integrative awareness. So you appreciate yourself, you appreciate your group, you appreciate other marginalized identities, and you have selective appreciation for the dominant group. And so the dominant group, you've gone from thinking they're the best, I just love the dominant group, wish I could be like them, to thinking I think they're dickheads, everyone in the dominant group is probably bad, to, well, yes, there's bad folks within that group and some people with bad attitudes, but there are many people who align with my values and I appreciate that about them. But I'm not going to appreciate them just because of their identity and put them on a pedestal. Okay, so what that looks like for fat folks, stage 1, conformity. What that looks like, if you're in the conformity stage, you are going to have a brain that's got all of these thin ideals and you've got anti-fatness really internalized and you view fatness as something that needs to be fixed and you're probably trying to lose weight and you do not claim fatness as an identity in regards to, you're not like, I'm fat and that's who I am and it's a neutral identity. It might be like, I'm the O word and it's horrible and I need to lose weight. And there's a lot of shame, self-blame, there's judgment towards other fat people. So I'm not like those fat people. I'm a good fat person. I am losing weight and I'm trying to be better. Oh, I remember that when I was in this stage, conformity stage 1 of really, I had disdain for other fat people. Oh, I just thought, oh, they are pathetic, they're losers. Why don't they get their shit together like me? At least I'm ashamed of being fat and I'm trying to do something about it, but them, whew, they deserve to be shamed or whatever. And I definitely didn't want to be seen as fat or grouped in with other fat people, because being identified as fat, if someone said to me, you're fat, it would be the worst thing. The worst insult. It would just be like dagger to the heart. You could say anything about me, but if someone said you're fat, I'd be like, oh God, they know my shameful secret and they've spoken it out loud. It was so painful. So I did not want to claim that group of the fat people at all. My attitude towards other marginalized group is limited awareness of oppression and adopting dominant narratives. A lot of the time, if people don't understand about social justice, then it's very hard to be compassionate towards yourself and very hard to be compassionate towards others, because we have this inner monologue of, you should do better, you should pull yourself up from your bootstraps, you're bad, etc. It's hard to extend critical thinking and compassion to other groups because we're probably thinking similar types of things. There might be some good ones if they behave in a certain way, like, we might view ourselves as a good or bad fatty because we happen to be eating a salad, or maybe we don't the next day and that makes us bad. That's that kind of binary thinking of good, bad. And so we're not looking at other identities, critically examining how society may position them. We might, there might be some awareness, but maybe not so much. The view of straight-sized people when you're in this stage, oh my goodness, I would just look at straight-sized people and just think, they have their shit together. Oh my God, they're so much better than me. They're obviously more healthy, they're more disciplined, they're more attractive, they're more worthy. If only I could become them, then my life would be good. So this real pedestal is so sad, isn't it? Oh my goodness. Versus seeing them as, there's a group of people who happen to have a smaller body than me and, they're cool and I'm cool. It was really like, they're so cool and I'm such a loser. So that's where many people are at this conformity stage. And it's not bad if you're at this stage. It's so normal. Like I said, it'd probably be a bit weird if you've not experienced this conformity stage, because we live in such an anti-fat society that, it would be strange that you missed the memo that fat people are apparently the worst and straight-sized people are the best, right? And being in this conformity stage keeps us safe. It's very, very scary and dangerous to move away from a place where you're keeping yourself small. Maybe not literally, figuratively. Fucking hell, how do I say that word? When you just get a word and you're like, this sounds strange. Yeah, I'm saying it right. It just didn't sound right. What the hell? What was I saying? Oh yeah, keeping yourself safe, right? It's safe when you have a society that says fat people are awful, pieces of shit, blah, blah, blah. And then you bow down and say, yep, I know it. Yep, you don't need to tell me. I know. I'm a piece of shit and I'm lazy and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to do everything to not be that awful thing that society tells me I am. And it might be the only time that you get praise. That feeling of when your friends, family, doctor, whatever says, wow, what did you do to get there? Tell me your secret. Who was I talking to about this the other day? I had a one-on-one session with someone else and we were talking about this, how, the doctor coming in saying, oh, tell me your secret. And the doctor previously never really paid any attention to you because they obviously thought that you were a non-compliant time waster, and as soon as you walk in with a smaller body, they're like, oh my god. And the secret was, I have an eating disorder. It's great. And my doctor saying, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And I was like, oh great, okay, anorexia. That feels good. Obviously then when you gain weight back, you feel like a piece of shit because you go to the doctor and they're just like, hi. Oh, I see you're fat again. And that feels really bad. Okay, so then the next stage, to dissonance. So occurring when you experience anti-fatness, or, which, if you're in a fat body, you've experienced anti-fatness, or being exposed to body diversity or fat liberation or something that's different from what you've previously been exposed to, and it creates confusion or a conflict. This was, for me, the moment I've shared before, sitting in my bed, scrolling on my phone, seeing Reagan Chastain's blog, Dances with Fat, for the very first time, and reading everything and turning to my boyfriend at the time being like, did you know this? This is my first exposure to these types of messages that it's okay to be fat. And, it's like a secret that society had kept. And it was really powerful. But then also, by the way, I say boyfriend at the time, I'm totally gay now. But also, just in case you were like, hang on, I thought Vinny was queer. Yes. Anyway, but also, what the fuck was I saying? ADHD. Also, that's what I was saying. Oh, but, we do know that fat people are really unhealthy. Yeah, it's an option to not completely despise myself and my body, but, it's kind of irresponsible. But I do really want to become thin and sexy and have my boyfriend say, you're so thin and sexy, and others say, you're so thin and sexy. That means I'll be giving up that dream or that reality if I lean into this. But hang on, my whole life I've been trying to become thin and it's not worked. So why would it suddenly work now? So it's kind of like this back and forth. It doesn't make sense, but still I'm holding on to these beliefs. So we have less self-blame, but there's uncertainty. There's growing empathy that we have for ourselves and other fat people. And we have increased awareness of systems of oppression that other people are living with. In regards to straight-sized people, we begin to notice bias and unfair treatment. And we begin to say, hang on, why is it that every store carries only straight-sized clothes when there's more fat people than there are thin people? Hang on, why is that person getting more dates because they have a smaller body and I'm getting less? Is that true? Is it true that fat people are unattractive? So yeah, kind of questioning, but still in the back of their mind, you're like, oh, someone could say, here's how to be thin. You'd probably be like, give me the answer. I definitely still want to be thin. Okay, then the next stage, resistance and immersion, and that involves rejecting diet culture, embracing your fat identity and the fat community. And this is the stage where people look angry, which is normal, right? You've kind of woken up and you're like, what the fuck? What? This is so not fair. I can't believe my whole life I didn't know this, and I didn't even spot that it was inappropriate that my doctor said, keep doing what you're doing, because I had an eating disorder. I just, didn't clock that. And then you see it everywhere, and it's really fucking annoying. You put the TV on, and you're like, why is this TV show only got straight-sized people, white people, non-disabled people, etc., etc.? What the fuck, right? You get really angry. Anger is really helpful. It's protecting yourself, and so you've got that attitude toward yourself is that you feel a sense maybe of pride, love, acceptance about yourself. This might be the stage where you're, quote, coming out as fat. So claim the identity of fat. You'll be like, I'm a fat person. You might talk to other people about all of this. I remember when I was in this stage and I'd be like, can you believe ABC? Or did you know XYZ? It was just a big part of what I was about and being pissed off about lots of things, rightly so. Okay, so with the other fat people, you've got the solidarity, you've got community identification. So you might be starting to join fat groups or go to events or etc. etc. And you're going to have increased solidarity and awareness about oppression that other people are experiencing too, and thinking that's fucked up too. And then the attitude that you would have towards straight size people is distrust, anger, or rejection. This is where you'll see online where people will do things like post memes or whatever that denigrate people in smaller bodies. It's because they're at this stage, and so that stage is resistance and immersion. It's that anger towards straight size people because they have been the dominant identity, and many straight size people are the people who are perpetuating anti-fat bias alongside fat people. And so like the common thing that I will see is someone posting the meme, dogs like bones. I can't remember what the meme is exactly, but it's like fat women or fat bodies are superior because men don't like thin women because if they do, they're a dog, and because the dogs like bones. Basically, that's the gist of it, right? And so, and then someone might say, well, this is what body positivity is, and I'm like, ooh, no, you know, we love our straight size allies. It is not them. It is not. I'm not down for that. Of, you know, shitting on them. But when you're angry, right, that feels good. To have this counterculture feeling of like, no, actually there is some good things about fatness, and fuck the thins. And when I talk about the thins, TM, there's no trademark on the thins, but I'm talking about the thins as in thin supremacy culture. The same way that you would talk about white people as it's white supremacy culture. So white people are doing ABC, and we're describing the worst parts of a culture, of this dominant culture. Obviously not everyone in that culture, but you know, I'm happy to talk about white people or white supremacy as white people have been doing this, knowing it doesn't mean that I'm doing that, because I'm not. Maybe in the past I did, but my culture, generally speaking, is doing that, and that's a culture that I'm a part of. And it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person, it just means that I benefit from this thing that I shouldn't benefit from, and I think that that system should be destroyed. Yeah, so anyway, in this stage, which is the third stage, resistance, you might be like, fuck thin people, I hate thin people, they're all pieces of shit. I don't think people are actually saying that. Maybe they do, but you know, that's when we get those, you know, memes that are maybe not so kind. All right, so the next stage, introspection, and this is where people will begin to question those rigid oppositional beliefs and seek a more personally defined identity. Okay, so that's when, all right, I've let anger run its course, and we know it's not bad that you might feel angry. You have to feel that, because rightly so. This shit's fucked up. So feel that anger, and then once you kind of like, yeah, okay, I'm feeling good, I've let the anger explode. Now we can be like, all right, so can I get some stability? Versus being a little bit more, I don't want to say reactive, but a little bit more kind of less stable in our identity, or more. If someone said something to me at that time like, oh, fat people are pieces of shit, it would really make me wobble. I'd be like, you know, fuck you. And, you know, I would want to have like a online debate with someone, because I would really want to present them with evidence and prove them wrong. And I would spend a lot of my energy feeling not so safe in my identity, but feeling passionate that I knew that fat liberation was for me. And because I wasn't so safe in my identity, I would not be able to relate to people who were trying to harm me with more balance. And that was fine, right? That's absolutely okay that I did that, and we do that. It's just a natural human thing. But now, with that introspection, I'm like, people are going to be being ding-dongs all over the world, right? People are going to say things and believe things, and, you know, and sometimes I might be like, oh, I'm so frustrated with that, but I have no desire to. If someone was to put something on my Instagram, something bad, I won't respond to them. I'm just not interested. I don't care. I'm not, not interested. Whereas before, when I was in that resistance stage, I needed to resist. That's the stage that I needed to. I would be going back and forth with someone on my Instagram comments, and they were like, actually, fat people are horrible. And I'd be like, actually, we're not. And they'd say, actually, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be using a lot of my energy towards that because I needed to resist. But in the introspection stage, you're more stable, and then you've got that kind of still got that solidarity, and you're able to bring nuance to the table. So still in the resistance stage, my thinking was still very, because diet culture, anti-fatness is very binary. Getting out of that binary thinking is hard. Also, binary thinking is a manifestation of white supremacy culture. And so, untangling all of that and coming to topics with nuance is this introspection stage. So, for example, maybe I would have been like, okay, say if someone said, oh, I'm a feminist, and they said, oh, I'm a stay-at-home mother and I don't let my husband do any work, or my husband doesn't do any work. I would be like, no, you're not. Fuck you, you're wrong. I wouldn't be saying fuck you, you're wrong. But I'd be like, you are not a feminist. If you do this, it would be very black and white, right? Whereas now, with the introspection, it'd be more like, okay, what's going on? Let's look at this. I was also, like we talked about in the last episode, of looking at systems of oppression versus individuals. I was looking at what individuals were doing and saying, they're wrong. I don't know if I'd be saying it out loud to them. Maybe I was. They are wrong and systems are wrong. Whereas now I'm like, the systems are fucked up. What you do to survive the systems, whatever, do you, right? And so that's that nuance that I didn't have when I was resist. And so that also meant the attitudes towards straight-sized people, less generalization, recognition that there are straight-sized people who are incredible fat allies, and that there are many straight-sized people who would not perpetuate harm against me or be anti-fat. And also they're within a system that tells them that their body is better. And so they have a job to unlearn that messaging the same way I have a job to unlearn white supremacy culture, right? And then the final stage, integrative awareness, that represents a secure identity as a fat person. This balanced perspective that supports both self-acceptance and social change. And this is hard because this is the offering yourself compassion, offering yourself and offering others compassion. And I feel like this is a lifelong journey. The more that I've offered myself compassion, the more I'm able to extend it to others and vice versa. A lot of times with fat folks, it is we can look at other fat people and say, oh, well, I can see that they're beautiful and I can see that they're ABC. But for me, no, I'm not so great. It's a rule for them, but it's not a rule for me that applies for me. And the reason for that is because it's unsafe for us to go out there and do those things that we admire in other fat people. We can celebrate it for them, but for us, it's not a risk that our brains are letting us take at the moment. It's like seeing someone doing base jumping and you're like, wow, that's so cool that you're doing base jumping, but fuck no, I'm not going to do it for myself because I don't want to die. And I mean that would be a normal reaction because the base jumping death rates are huge, but that's what it feels like, that, oh, I might die. And so our brains are saying, don't you think you can do that base jumping, because you fucking can't, because we're trying to keep ourselves safe. But we've got that, we're able to extend that compassion to other people. So we have supportive and collaborative relationships within fat communities, and we have active solidarity with other marginalized groups. We're unlearning the unhelpful beliefs that we have held about that. We're becoming a traitor to our privileges. So me becoming a traitor towards white supremacy because of the work that I've done in fat liberation. And then in regards to the way that we view straight-sized people, we're able to engage with straight-sized people and recognize that they're part of systems of privilege, but see them as, people that are allies and are important parts of the community and have important voices. When we think about who gets to talk about fat liberation or anti-diet stuff, I think that it's really important, obviously, that we have fat people and the most marginalized fat people, but also I think it's appropriate that we bring in straight-sized people because they have an unearned privilege that means their thinness, that means that they are able to communicate with others with privilege in a way that fat people, because of anti-fat bias, can't. I wonder how many people have discovered fat liberation through body positivity, through, intuitive eating or something like that, through a straight-sized person. I know that my first foray outside of Reagan Chastain was Lindo Bacon. Lindo, being straight size, gave legitimacy to the messages that I was reading from Reagan Chastain. I wonder if I didn't learn from a straight size person, if it would have been too scary for me to join this. The straight size person gave it kind of like, well, at least one straight size person. It's not all of these just loser fatties who are making excuses, which is what my brain said. So anyway, so there's that more nuance, that more compassion towards everyone, continuing to becoming a traitor towards all systems of oppression. So, what does it look like if you are a straight-sized person? Do you start at the kind of the other end and then become a traitor to straight-sized people? But it's kind of different, right? We have different stages. We've got 5 stages still. So this is what it looks like. So the first stage is called contact. So contact. You have limited awareness of anti-fat bias or your own size privilege. And you think, society is fair, and that body size is, fatness is caused by someone's choices. Fat people are fat because they eat too much food. I'm thin because I make the right choices. And if you see fat people saying, hey, this is not fair, you kind of think, whatever, maybe you should lose some weight, right? So that's stage 1. It's called contact. The next stage is called disintegration. And that's where you have increased awareness that anti-fat bias is a thing and that you might have some privilege, and you feel confused. You feel guilty. You feel it's uncomfortable. And this is where straight-sized people will say, but what about the thin people? So if you see comments on the internet saying, hey, fat people, maybe you're not an absolute piece of shit. This is when you'll see comments like, oh, what about thin people? Are you saying thin people are pieces of shit? They're not. They're just centering fat people, because thin people are always centered. So that's that kind of like, I feel uncomfortable, but I kind of see that there's a problem, but I'm feeling guilty and I'm confused. And they're still like, in this stage of the disintegration, they're still like, well, we know fat people are unhealthy. Right, so they're not quite, they're not there. They're just like, oh, I think this might be a problem. And then we've got reintegration. So they're going back into their thin identity. So they kind of peek their head out and they're like, oh, I feel guilty and confused and what's going on? And so head back in. And so they would feel defensive. They could then blame fat people for their body size or justify anti-fat bias of being like, yeah, but we're just concerned about your health. We're just thinking about your health. And this is because they want to get that comfort back. They want to get that comfort back and be like, well, I haven't been a massive dickhead to fat people, or society, and is not awful to fat people, because really they should just take responsibility for their health and they should just really lose weight. So it's kind of like they go forward and then backwards. Next, we've got pseudo-independence. And so that's the intellectual understanding that anti-fat bias is real, but they're still hanging on to certain things. They recognize that their system is unfair, but at the individual level, they're thinking, yeah, but an individual fat person should probably, try and fix themselves in some way. Or maybe they should be, a good fat person. Maybe they're like, okay, well, I can get behind fat people who run marathons and, put salads up the bum or whatever, but fat person who's like, I'm fat and I don't want to be fat, then, that's a bit too much. And then the final stage is autonomy. And so that's an internalized understanding that they have privilege and that weight bias, anti-fat bias is so fucking real. And they've unlearned all of that. Oh yeah, but what about your health? And oh yeah, but we all know that fat people are this and that or whatever. And all those lingering things are kind of have fallen by the wayside. They truly support body diversity, challenge anti-fat bias when they see it. They're being that traitor to thin supremacy, right? They are building genuine, respectful relationships with people of all different body sizes. So that it goes from contact, disintegration, reintegration, pseudo-independence, and autonomy. So that's the journey that straight-sized people go on. So I wonder, if you're straight-sized, where are you at on that journey? I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably at the kind of pseudo-independence or autonomy stage, the later stages, because if you're here listening to this podcast, it says you've probably done lots of work already, right? Which is cool, which is awesome, amazing. And also, if you're listening and you're like, no, I fucking hate fat people, that makes sense. And also, is that helpful for you and society? Maybe you say it is. That's fine, whatever. But so let's talk about the signs. Signs that you're unlearning. So signs that you're further along. If you're a fat person, if you're further along in this journey, you're resisting anti-fat bias and you're thinking, maybe you're coming out as a fat person. Okay, so let me read them out to you. Okay, so signs that you're unlearning. If you have a bad body image day, you get curious about it and you realize it's likely not about your body, and you investigate what could be the cause. So the cause could be something like systemic issues, like you went to the mall and there was nowhere to shop in your size, or you could be stressed, or you could have been watching Bikini Babes on the beach dating show and that was a trigger for you. So instead of saying I'm having a bad body image and it's because my body is bad, you say, what's going on here, brain? Are you trying to help me with something? Are you trying to keep me safe? So you get curious. Next, you're off the diet land swing of restricting and binging. So you're not doing that anymore. You're not being like, okay, well, maybe this week I should be good because I'm going to be bad at the weekend and eat food like a human. So you're not doing that anymore. You're off the swing. You're like, nah, not for me. If you engage in body movement, you do so for reasons outside of manipulating your body size or because you feel shame for eating. So if you're moving your body, you're not doing it because you feel shame. Next, you feel relaxed around food most of the time and have reduced the number of disordered eating behaviors that you might have had in the past or have none at all. So just feeling relaxed about food, not thinking about food too much, thinking like, oh, it's lunchtime. What should I have for lunch? But versus when I'd wake up in the morning, the first thing I'd think about was food because I was literally starved. So if you're thinking about food, it's probably a clue that you need to eat more food because you're probably denying yourself food. You're restricting. Next, you use critical thinking skills when a new alarmist headline or news story is shared. So you remember I said in you could feel a bit wobbly. That stage where you're angry and you're kind of more reactive. That's the middle stage, resistance. You feel a bit wobbly. And so if a storyline drops like, turns out fat people are all, eat babies and are about to die, you are able to say, okay, let's look at the evidence. And, they'll be like, let's look at this study that they've done. Fat people love eating babies and snatching them out of prams because they're just so hungry and greedy. And then you look at the study and then it's like, oh, it was done on rats in 1974. And, it's got nothing to do with fat people or whatever. And so you're able to go, okay, well, I'm going to, look into this, or I'm going to look for the nuance, or I'm going to say, well, I know that it's probably some sort of nonsense. So you use critical thinking skills. Next, the way that you talk about fat bodies or your body is neutral or filled with compassion. You recognize all the wonderful benefits of being fat. Guess what? Next episode, 46 benefits of being fat. Fighting your body is off the table. Instead, you're drawn to fight institutional, ideological, and interpersonal anti-fat bias. So you're taking that fight to the right place, not to your body. You call out anti-fat bias when you see it or recognize when it's happening. As I said before, you're not even aware. Sometimes we're not even aware. And then we become aware and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, it's fucking everywhere. And all my friends and family, they're all just talking about how they like to snort dust because it's the most calorie reduced way to get energy, and it's so annoying. And so you recognize it and then you're calling it out. And obviously we can't always call it out. There's lots of different reasons why it might not be safe or appropriate, but when you can, it's happening. You listen to what your body wants, rest, food, etc., and fight any shame that arises. If you're struggling with that shame, then the book Laziness is a Myth, Laziness is a Lie, Laziness Doesn't Exist, one of them by Devon Price. Google one of those titles. Laziness and Devon Price is really good to unlearn that nonsense. Next, you're hungry for diverse media and understand how limited representations of bodies is harmful. You have a community of fat positive and anti-diet folks around you, whether it be virtually or in person. You understand that health is a complex topic and know that you can pursue health outside of weight loss, and also that health is largely a social justice issue. This is one where people get wobbly legs again, is if they get diagnosed with a health condition, then it's really hard to keep that kind of foundation of compassion and curiosity. People know not to talk shit about fatness or praise dieting in front of you, as ending body bigotry is a core value of yours. I'm so fortunate that the people around me, they just, I don't have people around me that are like, oh my God, did you know, like, breathing, that, it has like 17 calories every time you breathe? I don't have anyone like that in my life. Thank fuck. And I think, would people know not to, like, new people? I guess if people knew what I do, they probably would be like, oh, well, maybe it's not a great idea to say to Vinny, have you thought about losing weight or whatever? So if you've got that, that's, I think that's really unique. So it's where you're further along in doing this work, because it's so much a part of who you are as a person. It takes years to get to this point, by the way. If you're not there and you're like, I'm surrounded by people who talk shit about my body, their body, loves dieting, that's really normal. But yeah. Next, you understand that diet culture and anti-fatness is spawned from anti-black racism, colonialism, eugenics, healthism, puritanical belief systems. Did I say ableism already? Let's stick it in there if I haven't. Ableism. You don't try to hide your body for the comfort of others. So you do things like be out of breath if you need to. Not do the thing where, what I used to do, if I was out of breath walking up a hill, someone walked by and I'd be like, stop breathing. Don't let them know that you're struggling. Turn your face away. They're walking up and you before you see them, you're like, and they're walking by and you're like, hi, hello. Honestly. So being out of breath, wearing what you want, being in the photo. You know that if people don't want to love you, date you, have sex with you, or be friends with you due to your body size, then that's a them problem, not a you problem. You're able to recognize when a clothing line is not actually inclusive, when seats are not suitable for people of all sizes, and other ways larger fat people are excluded from the world. So you're able to recognize, bring in that curiosity and nuance of okay, like, is this suitable for me and for other larger fat people? So you're expanding considerations. Okay, you don't have scales in your house, and know that all they can tell you is your gravitational pull to the earth. If you have scales in your house, I really encourage you to just get them in the bin. Get them in the bin. If you can't get them in the bin because someone in your house wants to weigh things or whatever, make them so they're not in your eye line. You don't know, you can't see them. It's just like a little reminder, day-to-day reminder. Hey, you're too big. Or whatever. And if we can just get rid of it, that can be just so helpful, right? It's just like an automatic thing that our brain could be doing, talking shit about you when they see the scales. And finally, you can now see subtle anti-fat bias and diet culture that used to fly over your head. Yeah, which is also really fucking annoying. Sometimes you think, can't I just go back to not knowing this stuff? I guess it's like the Matrix, right? Sometimes it's just nicer to be back in that comfort. But it's not really, Sometimes it can feel like that. Everything that I used to like is ruined. It's the same, things I used to like, it turns out the guy is like a fucking predator. Oh, why does he have to ruin it? People with their bad behavior just ruining things that you used to love. Okay, so signs that you're not unlearning, signs that you're stuck. You say things like, ooh, I mustn't, when someone says, do you want to eat food? Or you say, oh, only a tiny piece, when someone's like, here, do you want a slice of this cake? I'm like, oh, only like 3 crumbs. Oh, I'm stuffed from my smell of a salad that I had earlier. When you have a bad body image day, you spiral and you dream about being thinner. You're stuck in it. You think things like organic food is superior and reduced fat, sugar, carbs are important things to focus on outside of having a legitimate medical condition. So that's like buying into wellness culture. You can see the beauty in other fat people, but not yourself. You move your body due to fear of getting fat or fatter. Almost everyone around you is into dieting, is straight size, or talks about fat as a negative. You think often about how being thin will make you hot and fuckable and wish you could just be that. Yeah, I used to think if only I could be that person. You see being fat as an indicator of laziness, being unhealthy or unattractive. So these is like, by the way, these are the kind of like, you're at the starting place. You're just entering into this. So a lot of these things you might say, no, that's not me. But is there any truth in that? Like you see being fat as an indicator of laziness? Is there still that kind of in between, I absolutely don't think that's true, to I absolutely do think that's true? Do you think that's true? Like, is there, if there's a scale, like, are you 100% on one side or the other side, or are you somewhere in the middle? And if you're in somewhere in the middle, could that be a clue that you need to work on that specific thing? Okay, next. Deep down, you really can't shake the idea that being fat is bad for your health. That really sticks in people's heads. Or maybe not health in general, but one type of health condition, maybe that runs in your family, that has been used as a stick to beat you with. Like, well, Uncle Jerry had type 2 diabetes, so you're going to get it. And so you're able to look at other health conditions and say, but for example, in this example, type 2 diabetes, you're like, but that one, because, it might be part of your future because it's almost exclusively a genetic condition, right? You don't understand about size privilege or call yourself fat even though you're straight-sized. I see this a lot of this was me, oh my God. I used to be like, I'm so fucking fat. I'm huge. Because I was comparing myself to straight-sized people, not comparing myself to all people. I would be like, oh my God, I'm a size 14? Oh, couldn't get any bigger, or 16 or 18 or whatever, right? I was, I just really thought I was really fucking fat. And I didn't recognize the amount of privilege that I had in, at that time, a smaller fat body, because I perceived myself as having the least privilege compared to someone who is in a size 0 body. So you don't recognize that you have size privilege if you have size privilege, and you call yourself you're like, I'm so fat, when you're not really. Or you might even be straight-sized. You have scales in your house and you use them to dictate your worthiness. You don't shut down diet talk and anti-fat bias, or sometimes even think that it's not a big deal if it happens. I see a lot of that of like, well, it's my mum, what am I going to do? It doesn't really affect me anyway. And things that people say make me think that it does affect them. These little offhand comments here and there. So is it that you're minimizing? And sometimes, we're not ever going to say something to elders, depending on your culture. It would be totally inappropriate, not part of what you would ever do. And that's okay. So you don't always have to shut down diet talk or things like that, but recognizing that it can be harmful and working out ways to mitigate the harm. All right, next. You feel good about yourself for eating, quote, healthy food. Do you ever get that feeling? You're like, look at me. I'm eating something really healthy. I feel good. It's so normal to feel like that. It's so hard to get rid of that messaging. Most of the media you consume features normative bodies. You struggle to connect the day-to-day anti-fat bias and diet culture, how they're connected to larger systems of oppression. This is like kind of a minimizing. Oh, it's just someone that's like talking about their diet. It's not that big of a deal, but it's actually connected to these huge systems that harm not only fat people, but people of all body sizes and other people in other marginalized identities. Next, you think that fat people are fat because they did something, quote, wrong to get that way, or because they're traumatized. I've seen this in the mental health space, and it really gets on my tits. Fat people can be traumatized, of course, but some people, old school people in the mental health field, think that if you heal trauma, you are going to get thin. I know I certainly thought that. I thought that fat people were traumatized and they were fat because they were making themselves fat to protect themselves from something. I'm not saying that can't ever be true, but evidence is not supporting it. And how many fat people have worked on trauma and surprise, fucking surprise, they're still fat because they just happen to have a fat body. body. All right. You believe everyone shares your opinions on fat people and aren't aware that many people love fat people, think they are gorgeous, and that fat people have rich, fulfilling, and successful lives. So basically, if we're thinking the life of a fat person is the life of a fucking loser, loveless, pitiable, embarrassing, and don't see the fact that many people are like, I would just love to be with a fat person. They are fucking gorgeous, living full, interesting lives, the same way that straight-sized people can live the same lives. And the same way, you know, sometimes straight-sized people don't, and sometimes fat people don't, right? But that is a very real and common experience of fat people to have good lives. If that's something that you're like, oh, if I'm fat, then I'll end up alone with cats and just awful. Although being alone with cats sounds good to me, but you know, the stereotype that you're just going to be some pathetic loser. Next, you shame yourself or others for being lazy when resting. You don't like being in photos and don't want them shared anywhere. Or you do lots of different poses to make sure that you hide your fatness. And finally, you can get behind fat acceptance, but only, quote, as long as you're healthy. AKA, you feel more comfortable when fat people perform good fatty roles. I see this so much. My hairdresser in Ireland, I told her what I do. She's like, oh my God, I love it. I love it. As long as you're healthy, then you go for it. And I was thinking, what? What? What if I'm not healthy? Like, because I guess she's thinking, oh, that fat people are unhealthy. So you're allowed to fight for the liberation of fat folks, but only if you're healthy and the fat folks that you're fighting for are healthy, because unhealthy fat folks, they don't deserve equal access to life. Yeah. So as long as you're healthy, well, you know, I don't believe that. So if you're like, yeah, as long as you're healthy, then that might be a sign that you're maybe earlier along. You're still learning. And yeah, so if any of these things, you're like, yeah, that's me, don't feel bad about it. I mean, shit, you've got a human brain. You're soaking up these fucked up messages that we're all hearing every day. Even if you're doing a wonderful job at all of this and you've come a long way, something can just pop up and then all of a sudden your brain's like, oh, you remember the hating yourself because of your fatness? Maybe you should start doing that again. Right? Our brains are really working hard to keep us safe, and life's going to throw shit at us. So it doesn't mean that you're a better or worse person if you're further along on the journey. It means that it's just a fact of where you're at, and use the information of, you know, the things that maybe you're not quite there yet, as, you know, maybe write them down and explore them more. And if you're feeling like, you know, I feel pretty good actually, yeah, you know what, I do a lot of these things, I believe a lot of these things, give yourself a big pat on the back. Even if you're just, you know, just give yourself, even if you're at the beginning, give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself some love. If you're there, if you're not there, who cares? You know, that recognition that you've done something really fucking scary. How hard is it to do this in a world that tells you that you need to be invisible, be quiet, don't rock the boat, don't behave yourself. Be a good, thin, white woman and obey whoever. To say, that's not really my thing, is really hard. Legitimately and dangerous. So give yourself a big pat on the back, give yourself some love, give yourself some compassion, and thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you are feeling good and that your life is nice. My life is nice. I feel good. And remember that you're worthy. You always were. You always will be. And stay fierce, fatty. Okay, goodbye.